Welcome back, guys, to the Bear and Scully podcast with me, Sean Scullion, aka Scully, Owen Mallon, aka the Bear, Aidan, the face for radio behind the scenes, and today we're joined with Glenn Beattie.
Good morning.
Glenn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Glenn, before we get into it, I'm going to do a shameless plug here.
Okay.
Guys, it is coming up very close on our 1 year birthday. 1 year since we've sat down with the mic. But keep subscribing to the page, keep your notifications on, because we are going to be doing a giveaway. So just bear that in mind.
Happy birthday to us.
The other thing about this is, Sean, what I just realised, by the time this goes out, we're 1 year old.
I was thinking that.
I should have brought a cake, maybe. Never tell me.
Glenn, thank you very much for coming on. Glenn, we reached out to you and your group and asked for a representative, and you draw the short straw, I would say. And then, but Glenn, before we get into it and we start talking about the RSE legislation that's coming in, what about a wee bit of background on you and how you got the short straw first, but how it all came about and how you become involved in that group?
Yeah, okay, so my name's Glenn Beattie. I am from a group called United Parental Action, and we're against the radical teaching of RSE coming into the schools from 2024. It's already underway. I grew up in a place called Portadown, and this all came from living in Annaghmore at the time, and through teenage years, adolescent years, got married, obviously, and settled down in Portadown. And then 2022, fast forward a few years, but in 2022 really stood for election in the Heritage Party. Went through what everybody else went through in COVID years, the lockdowns, etc., and thought something needed to be done, because whenever I looked into all the different things going on in the world, there was something desperately wrong. You know, we felt there's something desperately wrong with what was going on. Started looking into all these different agendas, 2020 agenda and 2030 agenda, and realised that there was a lot of people did not know about these things, you know. So stood for the Heritage Party in 2022, as I say. The issues with abortion was coming in. A lot of parties voted to have impairment up to birth, abortion for impairments up to birth of, you know, which for me is not right, you know. Children are close to my heart, and our wee girl's part of our testimony too. I'm a Christian and don't shy away from that. She's part of our testimony, and God gave us a beautiful wee girl to raise, protect, and obviously bring her up in the way we want to bring her up in. So after that was, we didn't get elected, obviously, but we took our stand. You know, took our stand, and our party had called a lot of these things out regarding the injections, regarding lockdowns, regarding all the information that we now know to be false, and all this was based upon lies. So we've took that stand, kicked out of restaurants, etc., shunned in society, but I just knew that the truth's the truth. Up to a year ago, through the lockdowns, we started looking at all the different bills that was being passed through Westminster. You know, you had the online safety bill, which have got good points in them and bad points in them. You look at the different bills. Recently, public order bill takes away your right to protest. Online safety bill is to do with, there's a lot of good things to keep people safe, but also it gives government more knowledge of your privacy, you know, online or whatever. So there's a lot of these things going on people just don't know about. And then it came to researching the RSE and looking into that. And we had looked about this. Obviously, there's a lot of media attention on it. There's a lot of people up and down the country who are reporting things going on in the schools in England, Scotland, and Wales, and the Republic of Ireland. Things that are shocking, and people read the headlines and go, right, well, is that for real, or is that just a tabloid headline, you know? But I think people put the blinkers back on, go back to sleep. But this has been in the radical teaching that has been pushed in now, trying to be pushed in for years. But when the Secretary of State in June this year came out with an address to, I think it was Pink News or something like that in Stormont, the LGBT community had said that this was more or less a victory for this agenda, and said that he wanted to bring in age-appropriate, scientific, accurate, comprehensive sexual education. So this is a term that he's used over and over again. This is a term that's been used in different documents over and over again. And this is where we've got the point where there's a lot of parent groups in Northern Ireland who are saying that, no, we don't want this. We don't want this in our child's education. Also, not only the parent groups, but we're finding a lot of pastors and ministers, a lot of people from both sides of the community, obviously because we have a Christian country or a Christian basis of a country. You might not identify as being a Christian, but you can't get away from the fact that our schools are built on that Christian ethos, whether Catholic or Protestant here. And there's a lot of people coming in from different countries too that are coming away from Europe and all these countries to settle here because this is a free country. There's no, you can come here and it's just a brilliant country. Our country, the British Isles and Ireland, are a brilliant country to be part of, and live in and to raise children and work and all the rest of it. So a lot of these people are up and down the country getting irate, so there's been a lot of WhatsApp groups created. All of those guys are, creating one community, regardless of what your background is. This is mainly about RSE here. It's not green, white and orange. It's not red, white and blue. This is because this is trying to change the cultural norms of society. And when this has been brought in, the people know this. People know this. They're not stupid. And when they start to read it, they're actually shocked at what's going on, So that's how it all came about. I was asked then to lead this group and lead and coordinate this in Northern Ireland for the basis of trying to raise awareness and trying to get this stopped and try to wake people up to actually what's going on here, So I've fast forwarded over about 20 years of my life, but
and it gives people a fair understanding how you come into the political background and how you've come to become aware of the legislation change. So before we go into the actual legislation, has this been passed that this is happening, or is this in a review process to happen? Just for clarity for anyone that's listening to this, and let's boil it down a lot more simpler to some of them that don't understand. This came out now, a legislation for RSE, for the sexual education, that they're going to make changes to the education to the children here in Northern Ireland on what they are to be educated on in the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So this is changes that are they being made or are they proposed to be made? They're already implemented over in the mainland UK, that in England, Scotland, Wales are already in place. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
So now is it the Secretary of State have come out and says that they will be implemented here, or are they being reviewed to be implemented here? Just so we're very, very clear on.
Yeah, okay, so there was a vote in Westminster, and the vote in Westminster trumped the people against and the people for. So there's more people, a lot more ministers for bringing this in here. Okay. So the UK government is sovereign in all decisions here. At the moment, the Secretary of State has superpowers. I think it's the 2019 Northern Ireland Act, Executive Act, more or less gives him power over every decision that can be made, or over the Stormont executive. So it doesn't matter if there was, say if our coalition government, if there was a high percentage of them didn't want to bring this in, he could still bring it in. He has given himself powers, the Northern Ireland office, to bring this in. So even if there was a majority, they've done the same with the abortion. There was a high percentage of people from both communities, from both backgrounds, didn't want this, who were conservative mindset, didn't want this, but he brought it in anyway. So the main issue here is this is going ahead, and he's going to bring this in no matter what,
Now, if our government is sitting, mm-hmm. they decide. But in the absence of government, the Secretary of State has the power till even if they put it on record, but because they're not sitting, he can bring that through. Is that correct?
If they were not sitting, he can still bring this in. He should give themselves, well, at the minute it's not running, so it's not a devolved government then, you know. The point of this is Section 9 of the Northern Ireland Executive Act gives him powers to act like a tyrant, more or less. Doesn't matter about the will of the people, doesn't matter what people want. If he wants to enforce something, he'll enforce something. And when these things go back up and get running again, because it's going to be a matter of time until they do, then that means that the majority of the parties right now at the moment would back this, because they're backing an agenda that is global. You know, it's global. Our global agendas are affecting our domestic politics right now. And whether it's a conservative, you know, unionist sort of party who stand against this, you know, they don't really have the numbers to turn around and say, to throw this out or to block it. Where you have primarily nationalist, you know, parties at the minute who are looking to push this in, plus the Alliance Party, you know. So there's a lot of parties there that the coalitions have more or less trumped. It's not about, this is about, for me, the definition of good and evil, you know. Is this going to be good for people, or is it going to be evil for people, you know? And it seems that the majority of our parties are backing the evil, you know, and that's what it is for me.
So the majorities of the party are pro this here. They're pro for this legislation to come in. Have they publicly stated that? So I take it you're talking about Sinn Féin and Alliance are pro for bringing this in. Conservative unionist parties, so the largest unionist party is DUP. Yeah. Where do they sit on this?
Well, they had their own campaign. You know, Johnny Buckley had done his own campaign saying that let kids be kids, which is brilliant. You know, it's absolutely brilliant. We can get behind that. But
did that stop short of actually saying we're against this, or was that? No, did it see that campaign?
They are Johnny, and they are publicly against this. You know, however, they do have a number of people that come on a panel and sit and discuss these things, range from high school teachers, etc., the whole way through. Ultimately, they're against it. You know.
Okay.
The other parties, TV, are against this too. But again, it's one of those things where even if they were in power, mightn't necessarily be able to stop us. Alliance, I asked all the questions to all the parties. Alliance is hell-bent on bringing this in.
Okay.
They're hell-bent on bringing this in, and they publicly and will take pleasure in telling you what they aim to do on this. So if Sinn Féin's the same, and the SDLP's the same as well. You know, whenever you ask them a question, they'll not probably want to say yes, but they're wrapped up in the same mindset. They're wrapped up in the same agendas here. You know, so you know, for me personally, you know, I don't want to make this a political thing, but every decision we make in our lives is political. You know, from the petrol you put in your car to the groceries you buy on your shelf, these are political decisions, and they're going to affect people. So for me, there's a massive conservative mindset in the Catholic community who probably would disagree with that. But because we have had, you know, ding-dongs over this last year after COVID lockdowns were stopped about our identity in the United Kingdom, who we are, you know, this goes right to the very being of our identity. And we need a reflection to say, what is our identity here? Are we Christian? Are we not Christian? Who do we identify as? Are we atheist or what? Do we identify with this radical teaching RSC that's going to come in? And it's been in from 2007. You know, these are things that have been being taught from 2007, but not to an extent. The 2007 stuff, RSC had been teaching in the schools. So schools can teach it and will be teaching it as part of a healthy lifestyle, you know, in line with their ethos. So if you have a Christian school who teaching about this stuff, they will cater it to their ethos, you know. But this new legislation covers LGBTQ matters. So that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and queer, you know, matters. So without getting too far into the actual documents, again, that range of ideologies or beliefs or, you know, shouldn't be forced upon children. You know, it shouldn't be forced upon the mindsets of children who haven't fully developed mindsets, or you know, physically they haven't even developed yet. So it's being taught, but not to the degree of the radical stuff that's coming in January time. You know, hope that answers your question on that.
No, and it does, Glenn, and it also, it's going to be very hard to separate and appreciate that we're not by any means, and we want to say this before we go forward, we're not a political podcast. We've regularly said, me and John's Catholic, and it's not that we would that I'm a massive practicing Catholic. That's who we are, but we're not a political podcast. So people in this country want to draw lines, and they always want to pigeonhole and things. But I want to be clear in this: it'll be hard to separate this issue from political. We're not coming at it with the view of political.
Yeah.
But it will be hard to separate because the way our country's governed,
Yes.
religion's at the forefront,
Yes.
and sometimes it's used to smoke and mirrors for us.
Absolutely.
But this is an educational matter for us, a children's education, no matter what religion. So this is, it's important for me to say that before we go forward on the podcast, that this is why it was important for us to understand what this was.
Yeah.
It's not. We have absolutely zero interest in bringing politicians on to talk about the actual politics.
Yeah.
The country is a joke to me at the minute. So to have that conversation, I find it weird that these matters that I see is in children, education, welfare, economics, the key components of what should be in policies, is always played in the background of the main game that the politicians play here to keep their support network strong. They play the green and orange politics or whatever.
Keep people divided. They keep people divided.
But
You know.
let's get at what is the radical. What does RSE stand for?
Okay, so it stands for Relationships and Sexuality Education, and that covers a large basis of things. So the new framework that they've put out regarding SEA. So SEA is the awarding body, the examination body, and also they provide the information for schools, for the Department of Education to issue to schools. So they'll say, here's your standard, this is what you teach from, and then they can create their own curriculums or syllabuses within the schools. You know?
And what do they take into account? Is this led from WHO? Who leads down into who's this built up? Is this built up from government figures? Is this teachers? Is this who makes up that sets the curriculum for the schools? Who makes that up?
Okay, so when you look into this, when you research this, there has been a framework has been issued publicly on a website on SEA, and it issues a framework of all the different things that's going to be taught on it. So it gives a breakdown. It gives a breakdown of foundation stage right up to post 16. So that's right from post nursery the whole way to 16-year-olds. And this is some of the stuff that's going to be taught on it, okay? The first one is consent, okay? So they're going to be teaching consent. What's good consent? What's bad consent? That's what it boils down to. So they're going to teach a child, of no age, how to consent or how to not to consent. For me, as a parent, we have parental rights, we have parental responsibilities, and one of those parental responsibilities is to protect your children also, So for me, that shouldn't even be near a child. That should be for...
And what age do they say that the consent's going to be taught?
Well, they're going to be bringing it in from no age,
So
there's also a primary school education draft of the guidelines as well done out for primary schools. So this is part of SEA's framework. The government says that it's only for key stage 3 and 4,
So that's 14 and 15 on.
Yeah. However, why does SEA have guidance on there for primary schools? We're thinking this is incrementalism, which is, more or less bit by bit, there's an end goal here, but you're starting at the very start, and we just chop away.
So they don't actually say the ages at what stage. Have they said there consent as in consent to sexual intercourse, or consent as in the touch, or what is the definition of their consent?
They'll teach consent as in inappropriate touch,
Okay.
inappropriate things. So they'll bring a positive slant on the things that are negative. So they'll say, this is what you don't want to do, or this is what, but then if you're teaching that to a child, will your child consent to a hug from you? Will your child consent when it teaches that? Will your child come and say, no, Daddy, I don't want me to sit in your knee? This is what we're trying to get through. What level does this go to when you start playing with these wee children's minds? So it's consent, developments in contraception. So are they going to teach children, about how to put condoms on penises? Like let's be honest here. How are they going to?
Have they an age recommended bracket that these certain articles, just for clarity, Glenn, and I'm not grilling you on it, I just want to know, is this something they're saying, oh, this is primary school? Okay. Or are they saying this is from Key Stage 3 and 4 on, so we're talking 14 to 15, they should know this at 15 or 16? Yeah. Because when I was reading it, there was ages recommended in different levels of these legislation. So have they an age?
So here, I took us straight from SIA's framework. Yeah. And this is the first part. This is ages 3 to 5, my body and development, naming body parts. And it references NSPCC as a talk called PANTS. To be able to name parts of the body, including penis and vagina. Be able to name similarities between boys and girls, body parts. And no private means between areas of our bodies, private, etc., etc. So that's just one snippet taken out of that. So that's ages 3 to 5, There's also ages 3 to 5 primary school teaching on gender ideology as well. So this is brought in from SIA. People can go onto the SIA website, download it for themselves, and have a nosy at it. Next thing up here is ages 5 to 11 relationships, and it comes into list various family types and structures. Explain the term for 2 mothers, 2 fathers, adoption, fostering, and single parent kinship. So mummy can have 2 daddies and two mothers or whatever, So again, I don't want to judge anybody or turn anybody down for their own personal decisions in life. However, when you understand what this is about destroying the nuclear family. This is about changing the cultural norms of society. And this is an agenda. This isn't just, it's lovely to have 2 parents who love a child. A child is 100%. Craves love. That's one of our needs, basic needs of lives, is to be loved and accepted. So it's deception on every level. Next thing here is 5 to 11. Recognise children's rights that are outlined in national laws and international agreements, ages 5 to 11. So again, we're not against children's rights. We want children to have rights. However, there's nothing in this about parental rights or parents' rights or parents' responsibilities or the law regarding sexual offences in Northern Ireland. So there's a lot of these things too that.
And what do they mean by identifying their rights and laws? In what way? What is it?
Okay, so UNICEF have 22 or 23 children's rights that that are universal rights. However, I'm not too sure if they are laws in this country. Okay. We have laws that are based on facts and obviously parts of legislation that is in the Stormont Assembly. So that then laws will state obviously what is consent, what is this, what is that, what is the other. And again, you can go on, it's a lot of reading, but again, you can go on and read what that means. And again, this is so vague that, if a teacher picks this up or someone who is probably from these communities, will they be teaching it to the extreme? And that's what we found, that when we done our research, we found that there are straight-laced Christian schools who are sticking to their ethos, and then there's other schools that are Christian ethos and they're teaching this stuff. You know, I got teachers' homework sent to us, curriculum sent through. This is what my child's being taught here in some of these classes, and everything was on it except heterosexual. You know, every other identity was on it except that. So that's where we are regarding those things. There's another. This goes on here. Ages 5 to 11. We know the meaning in terms of heterosexual, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and again, the RSE hub will cover this. Understand how people look, how people behave, or their aspirations should not be limited by traditional expectations of what boys and girls should do. So again, this is an attack on the cultural norms. So we all grew up with most of us all grew up with a loving family. Some didn't grow up with a loving family. Some have got difficulties, and we all have difficulties in our families. But we all had that structure: male, female, mother, husband, you know, father, protector, you know, man who goes out to earn the crust, does the work around the house. Mother nurtures, provides, and those are roles given by God, you know, to male and female. However, when we read this, you know, you see that it's attacking traditional expectations. So your father and mother would say to you, well, come on, we'll go to mass, or come on, we'll go to church. And years ago, people respected those things because they knew deep down there was a God. They knew that there was a God, and they went out of respect, and they heard what they needed to hear, and they knew that this was common sense. You know, in the book of Genesis, it says God, you know, created them male and female, and then it goes on then to say that children are the kingdom of God. You know, so obviously God knows that, you know, to fulfill a generation or to keep a line of human beings being produced for procreation, that two man and woman must come together and must produce offspring, and then that will produce, you know, the kingdom, obviously. So there's these things that people know, respected for years, but now this is an attack on the traditional expectations, regardless if you're Protestant, Catholic, Jew, Hindu, whether you believe in religion. And I think that's where it goes to here, you know, deeper. This is a new religion. You know, this is the overtaken religion now, you know, especially if taught to younger children, you know. There'll be people say, well, my child wants to identify this, identify that, and there will be those people who do that. But I think there's a growing emphasis to say that, you know, my child's my child, my property, my child is the way I want to bring them up. So that must be respected as well regarding the schools. It's up to the schools, it's up to the parents. The parents must, their beliefs and their understandings must be respected by the board of governors in every school, because that's what some of the law, international law, says too, that parents' religions and beliefs must be respected as well. I forget the actual.
Who the teacher is delivering this. The teacher's asked to deliver this training.
Mm-hmm.
Who educates the teacher in what is to be delivered and what is not to be delivered? Because there is a part of this that says this is open to interpretation. Is that correct? That some of this is the interpretation of the school and the teacher.
But am I right in saying that the school can also take in an external body to teach this as well?
Okay, so the radical stuff isn't in yet. You know, we find, like, don't get me wrong, there's some schools teaching it. There's some schools that are, you know, fully promoting LGBT awareness weeks and months and stuff. So they would be teaching it. But the thing is that the schools that shouldn't be teaching it have not consulted with parents. There's such a radical ideology, and this is what it is, and it's an ideology. Sorry, can you repeat your question there for me?
No, just Owen was saying is it the teachers that are actually the ones that are presenting this to the kids, And my thought on it was that the schools could also get in an external body to come in and give this.
Yeah, we've
Teaching.
found that there are out schools, probably teachers don't, some teachers don't want to teach it. I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but whenever they do that, then they bring in 2 or 3 people or organisations that have already been mentioned, who have been fully involved with trying to get this into school systems for years, and they are pro LGBT, pro gender ideology, pro this, so, but the parents haven't been consulted, and that's the big thing, is the problem. Now, it's not officially in the schools now, because we're at the stage where it's go out for consultation, but the consultation from I forget the date, I think it was from September to the 24th of November, that's when it stops. So the parents will be consulted on, whether they want to opt their children out of these lessons. It's not going to stop it, but it's going to be.
So, yeah. So, you can sign online that if you wish for your child to be taken out, but it actually isn't. We're signing to say that we want to stop to come into the curriculum. This will roll on.
Yeah.
But each parent can make the decision to take their child out of the class at that time that's being delivered. Is that correct?
They can. The guidance on it so not clear at the moment. This consultation is for the Department of Education to issue guidance on the opt-outs. So if you fill that out and you contact your school and say, I don't want my child in those things, then they're going to make a decision based on this format that's happening on 24th. So that's in a nutshell,
So if anybody's listening to this, we are actually going to bring this one forward sooner, because that allows people the opportunity to make that decision and go on, sign on. So you can go on to the educationni.gov website.
Yes.
And there is an option, if you want to protest against this, there's an option to sign. Is that correct?
There's an option for you to fill out a consultation form.
Yeah.
And we can go through it later. But there's an option there for you to fill out a consultation form. And then the Department of Education will have to issue guidance on the back of that consultation on opt-outs, on whether you want your child to be removed from those. But regarding the actual policy, the Secretary of State has mentioned that he is legally bound to CEDAW recommendation. I think it's paragraph 86D, I think. Don't put it, that's the right direction for it. And he has said that he is legally bound to bring this in, into the schools. So he has a legal obligation he must fulfill. The thing about this is that it's up to the Board of Governors of every school, because they're the gatekeepers of what comes in and out of that school. So they say what comes and goes. However, the Secretary of State has said that all grant-aided funded schools must bring in this ideology. So he's blackmailing the schools to say,
You want the money?
You want the money, yeah. So we're at a juxtaposed impasse here where everyone's going, I don't want this coming into the school, I want this, and then we're coming to say, right, well, we need to go through each stage here. We can't jump from, A to Z. We need to go through each stage of what they are proposing here,
And are you worried that this legislation is a precursor to other legislations coming through, that this is laying the foundation to change fundamentally the education that's going to be delivered? Is this, or is it what's the worrying part to you? What's the most concerning part in the changes to this? What is it, an overall, or what is in some of the points here? What's the most concerning part to you?
All of it, the whole lot of it. The most concerning part for me politically, right? Don't get me wrong here. I mentioned things today. I'm not here politically. I'm here because of the children, and I want that to be fairly repeated and cemented there. I'm here part of the United Parental Action, and that's what I'm doing right now. Section 9 of the Northern Ireland Executive Act needs to be repealed. So if I'm going out and trying to help people, that gives him the powers to do this. So that needs to be repealed by us all, and we must cry out for the devolved government to be up and running here. But before that devolved government gets up and running, this must be the leverage bargaining tool that we that's RSE, is not allowed to come in. Parental rights must be protected. Children must be protected. And we must stand together on this, you know. Regarding this relationships and sexuality education, it goes on here, okay? So, gender, sexuality and sexual orientation, ages 11 to 14. Develop an understanding of sexual identity and be able to describe the terms associated with sex, gender and sexual orientation and give examples. Understand what way the individuals think of themselves or describe themselves in other terms of their gender is unique to them and should be respected. Another thing about this is, on the bottom of this is the importance of vaccination programs. The example of the HPV human papillomavirus vaccine offered to girls and boys. I don't know if I said that properly, but girls and boys 12 to 13 to help protect them from against HPV related cancers, etc. So there's things on it there that, again, I would say to myself, right, well, as a concerned parent, why are you teaching my child consent? Number two, if I want my child to be vaccinated, I don't want to go there today, but are you going to teach my child to consent to different things about their own bodies, regardless of my parental rights, regardless of what I want for my child, until they're a certain age to make their own decisions, including vaccinations? So, for me, there's alarm bells ringing off here about this. You know, I just don't like it at all. Again,
But a child consenting. So just so I can be clear in this, the medical treatment of your child is your responsibility till they're 18, and they can make that legal choice themselves, no matter what guidelines or what conversations had. The law in this country states that up to 18 years of age, the medical treatment and the responsibility relies with the parent.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual consent in this country is at 16.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference in vaccinations and consent.
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear on that there, for the simple reason is, if it's legal in this country at 16, consent, and they're saying to be talking to 15, 16-year-olds about that, but the vaccination side of things, no matter what, the consent won't apply to the vaccinations. They can have their opinion,
mm-hmm.
but they don't get to consent till they're 18.
Yeah.
So they don't get the it's just, and I'm only trying to be clear that, so when we're saying this and anybody's listening to this, the consent shouldn't really apply to the vaccinations because they don't have that right.
Yeah.
So that to me, it's different, but I do get, and vaccinations is a thing that we all now, we used to take for granted. You go and get your booster, you go and get your smallpox, we done it all. And now all of a sudden, we've had the COVID, we've seen the misinformation on the vaccinations.
Yeah.
I think there was a thing saying 78% of people regretted getting vaccinations.
Yeah.
I am one of them that publicly said I regretted that I got it, but I was traveling on that and I was nearly couldn't move. Yeah. But it's a complete topic now where you're right, parents should be considering, to the point where your children's in preschool now and you get the letter out and you're like, right, are we right about this too? Yeah. We weren't right about the last injections we were rolling out. Are we right about this too? But consent does not reflect into vaccinations because the children don't have a say in that.
Yeah.
So it's just for me, and that's why I want to be. So they're talking about that. There's other. What's the next one?
Okay, so this is ages 14 to 16. Distinguish between emotions associated with love, friendship, infatuation, and sexual attraction. Recognize the place of stable, committed relationships, the legal status of long-term relationships, including marriage. Discuss how close relationships can sometimes become sexual. Describe pleasure, rights, empowerment, sexism, and feminism. Learn strategies to manage the emotional aspects of relationships. Understand ways to manage relationship loss, such as separation, divorce, and bereavement. Describe the concepts of sexual identity, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Learn about diversity and sexual attraction, developing sexuality, the gender norms, gender equality, stereotypes, bias, and gender-based violence. Understand ways that gender roles affect decisions and sexual behaviour, contraceptives and use, life planning. Analyse how more gender equal roles can contribute to a healthier sexual relationship. I'll just read on, keep on going. Recognise the sex should be pleasurable, but carries implications for their own health and well-being. Be respectful of people's desires or not to engage with different types of sexual behaviour, intimacy. Recognise that some sexual behaviours can be dangerous. Listen to this. For example, erotic asphyxiation and chemsex that may lead to death. Recognise orgasms in both males and females as a sensation of intense sexual pleasure. Understand the role of the vagina and why it may be needed, including erectile dysfunction. Parenting and teen parenting, etc., goes on. So again, why are you teaching? If you tell a child to do something, not to do something, it's going to go and do anything. We know with children, we brought them up like we're living with them. But why does that need to be in SIA's formwork for the guidelines for them to release on the schools, for teachers then to take, the school to take a policy on that? How are they going to actually teach that? How are they going to actually break that down, for material for the children? PowerPoint, you can put a PowerPoint slide on and teach this. Chemsex and asphyxiation is dangerous. Yes, well, I don't even know what it is, to tell you the truth. It's crazy. It's crazy, and these are the people who are. And don't get me wrong. There's probably good people in SIA, and there's good people in our churches, and there's good people in our schools, and there are good people in these organisations. So they need our help and they need our support as well, because they're going to be in between a rock and a hard place here. So they need to know that we support teachers and we support schools and we support people in SIA and the Department of Education who are against this type of teaching, and that must come out as well. So as in a nutshell, what this really goes for here, it's the promotion of the LGBT matters over traditional family values. And not only that, but it's to change the cultural norms of society. It's to teach your children also to have an access to an abortion without your knowledge. And that's what it goes to. They said you can't teach this from a moral or an ethical standpoint, but even bringing that in, you're making a moral and ethical standpoint. And the same guy who has ring-fenced the whole abortion thing in Northern Ireland, that from Northern Ireland being one of the most sort of religious, if you might, and piety, civilization or country in the world up to 2019, he's now bringing in one of the worst abortion regimes in, and he's ring-fenced all the money for it in Northern Ireland. And it's going to happen in Craigavon, our hospital, where up to 6,500 children can be aborted, every year. He's put exclusion zones around the hospital. So if you want to go and pray, or you want to reach out, or you want to minister, or you want to help people, they've ring-fenced, I think it's 250 metres, don't quote me on that, around the hospital. That if you step in that zone to try and reach someone to go on to do one of these things, these people are going through trauma, they're going through issues, the point in their life that they're going through, they need help and support and ministered to. But what this has done is taken away the evangelical voice. It's taken away the Catholic Bernadette Smith. She's in the, I forget her movement, but she's fully for repealing Section 9. So any of those people go to these places, they can force being arrested, and there's somebody already been arrested as well up in Coleraine outside the hospital when this came in. People are going to get arrested and put in jail for prayer outside an abortion clinic. So this is another power that he's given himself, to do this. And we've seen it with the abortion, we've seen it with the exclusion zones, the schools, and he's going to push this in, and he's going to push this into school systems. And again, if you tell a child not to do something, they're going to do it. If you teach a child, about their sexuality from the ages of 3, what are the consequences of that? Are you going to have children sitting in schools, completely hyper with each other? Sexual abuse. Who records the sexual abuse in the schools if you're going to teach this? Is that going to be covered? All these different questions. It hasn't been thought out. It hasn't been, it's been thought out maybe by their end, but it hasn't been thought out our end to say, well, how do we stop this, Again, it feeds into, if a child comes home, say if a child ends up pregnant or something, they need love and help and support and parents who understand. And a life is sacred. Let's be honest. Life is life. Without life, we have nothing. And as a professing Christian, I respect life and I love life. And the 2 commandments that God said to us to do was to love thy God, all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. And the second was love thy neighbour. So it's not loving to bring a child to get an abortion. It's loving to get that child home, care for it, love it, and whatever way the parents decide to bring that child up within that family, is it not to be whisked off from your school or whatever it may be straight to an abortion centre. So that's another thing that brings in, controversial subject. But again, a lot of people who go through those things regret it. A lot of people who have been in those areas, later down in life end up, with the guilt of having the hit drink and drugs, and it just spirals out of control. And then there's the other thing here is the promotion of these dangerous, unfactual, unresearched transgender ideologies that we haven't experienced yet in this country. But when you look at other countries around the world, there's not enough evidence to back them up. There's evidence, okay, to say, what are the effects? And you look at the effects, and it's horrible. It's crazy, It's
where is the? To me. So this our country is basically made up Catholic and Protestant. Now there's maybe 0.5%, or it's getting bigger now, that don't identify as either or something like that. But something like this. But as much as this country would like to think that they're completely different religions, they're actually a very similar religion. The Christianity, it's well known that some of the religion, they're very close in ideology, they're very close in the beliefs. And so where do the schools stand? Surely there's few situations that most schools they normally unite on. But what is the general consensus of schools? Protestant schools, Catholic schools, integrated schools. What is the general consensus about this? Because I have seen some schools already post up that they won't be delivering it.
There's a couple of schools have came out, and fair play to them, primary schools have just said straight away, on social media or whatever, we're not going to be teaching this, which gives people heart.
How do they make that choice? How are they allowed to?
Again, I'm not too sure on that, but I think again it's the Board of Governors that comes into play here. There's a piece of legislation that I'll mention in a while that the schools are all governed by, and it more or less states exactly what the rules are of Board of Governors, parents, etc., and they're the standards that the schools are measured by. That's a piece of legislation. So for them to get this in, the schools are very quiet at the minute, very quiet, because I think they're just trying to see what way this is going. There's been a few people who are high up, let's say, and they are fighting this behind closed doors, So there are these things going on. However, parents must contact their school in a respectful, loving way, and just state their grievances about this. They must do that, because they must be knocking at the door morning, noon and night, more or less, to tell them about this,
Do you feel that this is being quietly implemented?
Well, you look at the way the academic year went. Okay, academic year runs from September to June time approximately, or end of May, June. All teachers go off on a holiday, 2 months. They're for the port, or they're for foreign holidays, and it's down tools. They don't want to think about it. Don't want to do anything about it. For those 2 months, then the Secretary of State brought this in 19th of June, approximately. He released a statement. So people don't really want to do things or look about things or research things over that time period. The 1st of September time was when the consultation started to November. So it's given a very, very short time frame for people to actually educate themselves on things that have probably been written for years, and have got guidelines that have been working on this for years. So it's given the teachers no time on this. It's given the parents no time on this. It's given activists no time on this. So we have to research everything in a very short time period and try and gather people together to build some resistance on this. Something that's so radical. I could see if it was changed to Irish history or British history, or we could have a ding dong about that, But This is something that is so radical.
Is that uncommon that they would bring this through like that? And it's sure, is that not the common practice that they allow a couple of 60 days, open it up, or is this just they've only done that with this piece of legislation?
I'm unsure of other pieces of legislation or other things that they're trying to bring in, but for me, I think this is, trying to get in before 2024. He had made a commitment that he would bring this in at the end of 2023. So far, he's got a time clock. He's brought this in, and from January 1st on, they want to be seeing, evidence or whatever how schools are going to be teaching this stuff. So but I think June time, the end of September, and then September on, schools are back. People are back. People's busy. Girls' brigade, boys' brigade. Parents running 3-4 nights a week. They haven't got time to sit down and research 5 or 6 different documents with 150 pages in each of them and pull out all the points.
And see, just on that, so everything that you went through there now, that is going to be the new teachings that you've just read from. So depending on how the school want to teach it.
Yeah.
So you have concerns around everything that you've just went through.
Mm-hmm.
So see, even the teachings there, I'll just go back to the 3 to 5 year old, just about them being taught about their body parts from 3 to 5 and that it's a penis and a vagina. Mm. What is your concerns about that? Because I have 2 young kids and a boy and a girl.
Yes.
And it's a Mickey and a Noonie.
Yes.
And that's their name, and if that's your penis and that's your vagina. Yeah. In my opinion, as a parent, they should know that that's their parts. If they call them funny names, they call them funny names. But what's your concerns around that though?
Okay, so it's up to the parents then.
Yeah.
That's so you just hit it on the nail there. It's up to your parents to bring your children up the way you want to bring them up and educate them on these things. It's not up to a school or some teacher or some other third party that comes in that nobody knows about that teaches your children. How are they going to teach them children about their penis and their vagina? What level, what depth are they going to go into? If you're at home and your child, you get into conversation, it's quickly just talked about and it's moved on with. But are they going to have a half an hour session where they're going to actually teach these children the ins and outs of things? And again, it's so vague because these are the guidelines. So it'll be up to the individual teacher what way he brings. So if you've got a conservative teacher, they might just say, read that one next week, or if you've got a liberal activist who's going into the school, they're going to go from 0 to 10 on this, and make sure that they know everything about that. So that's my concerns. Where are the stop additions to this? Where is the actual RSE policy to say no, that's okay and that's not okay? Who's saying that that's okay? Who's defining this?
As in, it's open to interpretation.
Yes.
Yes. What you want to teach.
What you want to teach. Yes.
Well, then, Glenn, I would say some of this here, and we're discussing this here. Would that not then lead you, because if you're worrying about the limitations of how they can use this and expand this, and I think if we get to the nuts and crusts of this, and all this is, you're worrying about the attack on Christianity and the marriage and the ideology, and where, if you open the door slightly, where does it stop on this? And this is mainly the bigger concern, the overriding concern on this is that. If we're being honest, that is what the overriding concern is. It's that. But if they bring this into schools, a level of education, surely then it would be on, you would be the school that you're sending your child, you would want to know the way that they're going to deal with this. There's going to be, if you say a liberal school, there is going to be schools that become more liberal now, and we're going to see that, and this is what's going to happen. And I think this is the biggest concern in Christian faiths, and I'm not saying in Protestant faiths, I'm saying in Catholic. The more traditional religious view is that this is not done and this is not spoke, because if you allow an inch here, we're worried that there'll be a mile taken. Mm-hmm. But I think what Sean's saying and what I was saying is, some of that I feel there's a level of practicality to. Mm-hmm. Some of it, it's almost like an interpretation. This act, it's how it's being interpreted. When I looked at that, I was like, well, that maybe makes sense. That a young child, they know the difference. They know why they're not a girl. They know why they're not a boy. There's obviously more complications as we go on now that things are changing, and we're worrying about now how much is said, how much confusion is. But the overriding concern here, it seems more that it's this here. Do you feel like Sean should teach that, and that the school shouldn't? That if he's teaching his son, what's the difference between his daughter and his son? Or I'm saying to my boys, this is this and this is that. Do you feel that all of that education should come from home, and that none of it's in the school?
Well, ultimately, parents are the primary educators of their children.
Yeah.
So, first of all, when you let your child go to school, you're giving them responsibility of your children. So that's why there's a form register in school. That's why, they have to be checked in, checked out, because you're giving them responsibility for 8 hours a day to teach your children as and what you want, in line with your philosophies and beliefs. So that must be line up with what the parents' wishes are, ultimately. If it doesn't, then you find yourself another school. It's like going around schools. Well, we'll pick this school whenever they're coming out of Key Stage 3, or when they're going in from secondary or from primary. You review the schools. You see if they're going to be good for the child. It's the same as a football club, or it's the same as a ministry or drama club. You go in, you see what it's about, and you evaluate it as a parent. Is it going to be good for my child, or is it going to be bad for my child? And as a parent, those are the things that you say, well, it's going to be good for my child. You put them in there. If it's going to be bad for the child, then you take them out. And as parents, we have that right, and we have that responsibility to do that,
Because that's the only reason I asked that question, because whenever I briefly read through that, and whenever I was listening to you as well there, I was like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with a child learning that? And in the same sense as in male and male and female, if there's a male and male and a female raising a child and giving it love and giving it a home and giving it everything that the child needs, in my view, I'm happy with that. If there's a child being loved, whether it's a man, woman and woman, or as me and my wife, I'm happy. And but is that not you? Obviously that's not your belief.
Yeah, it doesn't line up with my convictions.
Yes. But for me, live and let live.
Yeah, and again, I'm not judging people on these things. However, I'm saying that if you want to do that in your life, if you don't grow up and you hit 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 and you realise that you have same-sex attraction, or if you want to do these things, that's up to you. Me personally, coming from the background I came from, before I become a Christian, I went through a lot of dark times in my life. So I don't judge anybody. With the grace of God, I am who I am today, and I am here what I am doing today. However, we shouldn't be teaching these things to our children who are not fully developed, are not capable of making their own decisions from 5 to 6. They can't get a tattoo, they can't smoke, they can't drink, they can't learn to drive a car. So why teach them these things from no age? There's an agenda behind it, and I love and respect everybody. I really do. Anybody who knows me hopefully has a good word to say about me, because I do love and respect everybody, and that's why I try to work with all the parent groups and all the people in there, because I see people, in their daily days, and take compassion and love upon them, of what they're going through. But I don't think this should be taught to children, They shouldn't be taught to children from no age, because there is an agenda behind it. And this is the thing, once you peel back the curtains of this, it's not just about those issues that we talked about there, some things that some people wouldn't have an issue with. But there's a bigger agenda here. And whenever you look about it, it feeds into globalism. It feeds into Agenda 2030, and this is all part of the same agenda. I want to reference some documents here. So there is the WHO standards for sexuality education in Europe. There's the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality and Education. There's the IPPF framework for comprehensive sexuality education as well. So that's the International Planned Parenthood Federation. And then there's also fulfill a guidance document for the implementation of young people's sexual rights. Okay, so this is empowering children to make their own children. This is empowering children to go against the cultural norms of their family. This will There's 4 governments in life. You know, you've got church government, family government, self-government, and civil government. And as a Christian, you know, we believe that, you know, there's church and then there's civil government. The church and stuff looks after spiritual well-being. The civil government looks after the welfare of man and the benefit of man. Both are given the authority by God, but two should recognise that there is an Almighty. Our laws, Magna Carta, all these different documents that's been found in our laws in our land have been founded on the Word of God. This undermines everything, you know. And whenever you look into these different documents, I'm just going to read some of the things out here, okay? The WHO Standards for Sexual Education in Europe. Section 5 states, now I'm not saying this is the guidance, I'm saying these are what SIA has went to reference their information, you know, and then it'll be up to the schools then to go to SIA to see what their recommendations are for creating a syllabus in a school. So this section 5 says sexuality education starts at birth. Sexuality education should be delivered in an interactive way. And that's coming from one of their international guidelines. Section 6, page 6, ages 6 and 9. Recommendations, a curriculum content includes first sexual experience, gender orientation, sexual behaviour of young people, enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's body. I'll not go into what that states, but obviously you can make up your own mind about that. Differences between gender identity and biological sex and sexual intercourse. So that's the international standard. For ages 9 to 12, the curriculum content includes gender ideology, sexual orientation, including coming out, homosexuality, how to enjoy sexuality in an appropriate way, taking your time, first sexual experience, pleasure, masturbation, or orgasm. That's in the WHO standards. The next one then is the WHO International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, an evidence-informed approach to education 2030. And one of those things, learning objectives for 9 to 12-year-olds. Learners will be able to describe what sexuality explicit media is, so that's pornography, and sexting are, so that's knowledge. Learners will be able to describe male and female responsible sexual stimulation, explain that many boys and girls begin to masturbate during puberty and sometimes earlier, acknowledge that masturbation does not cause physical or emotional harm, but should be done in private knowledge. And it goes on and goes on. And those are the international standards, you know, that SIA is going and getting their thing from. They mightn't necessarily have stated those things, you know, so I need to make that clear, okay? But these
because I have seen some of these articles being shared around that the World Health Organization has released and that people have been, but we need to be very clear here. What the World Health Organization have said as their standards isn't 100% what SIA have taken, but that is who they would consult with, and then their own board would sit down and take from this what they're going to take and what they have. My worry is here, Glenn, and I'm going to be honest with you, some of what I feel is scaremongering in some of them, using and people have used the literature from World Health Organization, which isn't in the actual RSE legislation, as this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's not what's in the legislation, and I have seen that being shared about the group. Yeah. And when I first got that, I got the article and listed some of the things, and listed masturbation and listed identifying biological. That's not what's in the RSE legislation at the minute. My one worry is that it was used to generate people's interest in this. I to the point where I went and researched the RSE and read it, and I was like, well, that's not there, and that's not there. Nearly like, and I don't mean this to like an underwhelming, as in none of the radical ideology that was being shared and people were saying about was actually there. I understand what the worry is here, is what is going to come, right? Because if they're following this lead, how long before that's what it is?
Yeah.
But it's still not there. Northern Ireland is predominantly a Christian country. Now, the Catholic schools is run by the church. Protestant schools, they have their board of governors. Their ideology should match up till most of the political parties, most of the people that send their children there. My one thing I would say is, when you send your children to school and the school sits down and teaches them religion, people are fine. That's okay. When they start teaching them the sexual education, it's now what we're letting them teach. Now we're having an active say in but what the core problem is the attack on what you've openly stated, you're Christian, your core beliefs. Marriage is man and woman. Yeah. Procreation, sex is for procreation. Yeah. We don't discuss abortion. It's not. This is the main issue. Mm-hmm. My one worry is it's becoming smokes and mirrors and scaremongering here, that people are saying, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Mm. To me, a lot of that made sense. And I will say that to you as I share, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way, because you're on here and your point of view, and you've been very clear, and you're not mixing it, and there's not many people in these days that have their morals and beliefs and things, so I'm not attacking them, because so many people will share them. But for me, very similar to Sean, I look at that, a lot of that makes sense to me, because I'm like, I genuinely don't care what anybody is. Mm-hmm. If they're good people, they're good people. My belief in being a Christian is to be a good person first. Now, yours is much more refined than mine, but mine would be, if you're good people, you're good people. If my son's going to school and there is a gay couple that have a child, right? I want my son not to be confused by that. Mm-hmm. I would say, yes, son, that can happen in this society. Mm-hmm. There can be two men, there can be two women. I know to you, that's attack on your beliefs. But to me, I feel like that's a practical step in educating my child so he's not confused. You can be what you want to be, son. I'm not pushing, and I don't push things on to children, because a lot of what's happening in this world, this hormones and telling children what they are before they know what they are, is completely again what I'm saying. Yeah. But what people are saying, and the radical, to me, it didn't come across that way. A lot of it come practical. You talk about consent. If the legal age in this country is 16, you should be talking to 15-year-olds about consent, because it's going to be legal next year. A massive problem we've had is underage teen pregnancies. Yeah. So contraceptive, talking to them in school about sex, so they don't get pregnant. Like the across the water, where it's a massive issue, that one of the teachers said something like 30% of fifth years couldn't attend because they were pregnant. Yeah. So to not address that, to not look at them issues, and to say that this we won't talk about them, or we won't have them in our school, to me seems nearly there is an onus on us. And I completely appreciate what you're saying. Your beliefs and what you want for your children is paramount. Mm-hmm. So then you teach them and send them to school a thing, but you don't want views pushed on your children, but the views you have, other people won't want in their children. Yeah. But you would be happy enough for the school to teach Christianity and your beliefs till all the children, where other parents may not want that.
No, that's what I'm trying to make clear too. I'm representing a lot of different people with different beliefs and different mindsets, and we want to make that clear, you know. However, you know, the things that you've just mentioned, there are some things that are in this guidance that are positive, like, you know, online predators. You've just mentioned there's a certain amount of education there for Christian people, what you identify, but that can be taught in RE. You know, this RSE policy can be taught in different subjects. So why are we getting away from the biological facts here regarding, you know, a man and a man can't create a child? You know, let's just be honest. Naturally, two women can't create a child naturally. You know, let's be honest. For procreation and life in general, you know, it takes you to have 2 children and above for a society to be able to function and to, function and actually reproduce itself. Anything underneath that, your culture's dying. Your culture's actually on the down low, and that there's been studies on that too. So to actually have our race, our people, our identity of who we actually are, and don't get me wrong, I love children. I want them to have the best start in life, and I want them to have people who love them and care for them and respect them and bring them up, in a loving way. Don't get me wrong here. But again, it goes back to the fact is, should this be being taught? What details should be being taught? What shouldn't be being taught? Based on the cultural norms. I believe that our nation is in a moral decline because we have got away from the truth, of these things. A lot of few other things as well, but
you said it there, and I think this is the biggest problem for firm Christians like yourself is the moral decay that they picture the world morally decaying.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk about culture norms. The culture norms that you described to us at the start of the show about your mum and dad and thing, that is not the cultural norm we're experiencing now.
Mm.
And what I would say, and I genuinely believe that and when you say that you love and respect, and I would no doubt there's nobody saying that, but what I'm saying is not all beliefs will stack up with the same that you share. So when you talk about the cultural norms and what comes about, by saying we need to procreate, you can't make someone gay not gay anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by that, if they're not procreating, that won't change by what we teach people.
Yeah.
I do understand, and I don't want to come across like I'm thinking. I do understand what you're saying, because a lot of what you said, some of which I share, a lot of what you say, I really don't share. I don't share. I respect what you're saying, but I don't feel the same. I think culture norms is changing, and I know, and being a strong Christian, I know that you feel that that's an attack on your beliefs, an attack on what you see, and you want to help. But I think sometimes we have to take a look, and we have to be inclusive with love. And I know, with all due respect, when you say that you don't judge people, I feel like by some of the things you're saying, you do judge. And I don't mean that in a bad way. If you're saying here now, these things coming in, I think the main issue is the attack on marriage and the attack on the cultural norms. It's not this, and it's starting with the school, and you feel you need to protect. But then people could say the opposite way around. People could turn around and say, well, I don't want my child, or he shouldn't be in school anymore.
Mm.
That shouldn't be in school. They should be there for education.
Mm.
And then, which is a further attack, as you would feel. So where do we decide that you want this for every child to be taught, but you don't want this to be every child? Where an LGBTQ couple with a child may say, this is important to me that they're taught, and it's not important to me that they're taught that. Your beliefs and what you see as a cultural norm is completely different to theirs. So where do we start when we start intervening in what they do? Where do we stop? Where do we say, I want that out?
Yeah.
They're not in for that class.
Yeah.
Okay, now they're not in for this class. Where there has to be a crossover compromise somewhere here that, or what's going to start happening is we're going to have splintered schools. We're going to have really Christian ideology schools. They're going to become smaller. Then we're going to have more liberal schools where LGBTQ parents will send theirs.
Yeah.
And I know for you, even me saying LGBTQ parents is a struggle with your beliefs. But Sean made a very valid point, because there's so many people in our society may fit the norm of what you're talking about, but shouldn't have children. They're not good to them. They're not right.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's people, 2 men, 2 women, they just want to give love. To me, so be it. I think it's more important. Love outweighs some of the values that we hold. If they love them, care for them, what could be more important?
Yeah.
But I get the struggle here, Glenn, because I completely understand.
No, I understand
that
you.
you're Christian and you have strong beliefs, but I feel like some of the RSE is scaremongering from the main issue and the nuts and crusts of what it is. Is the worry that if we need to stop this here because it's this isn't the main problem, but this is. But where does that stop when we start intervening with every one of these things? Because then it nearly becomes opposite. We're excluding people. We don't want their beliefs talked about. I don't. There's at some point my two boys will grow up and they're going at some point in school and children ask you all sorts of questions. Why have I a Mickey and why have they not? So that's something we educate them on. And I'm happy enough if the teachers' views line up and teaches them too. The consent, some of the stuff that was in that, I actually thought some of this is actually quite practical because I want them to be fit to know the parts in the body so that if somebody ever come near, they know that that's not to be touched. So some of that I find practical, but I think my biggest issue in all of this is that why don't we just come out and say, what we're worried about here is that's what we're worried about. And how do we incorporate everybody in society so we can all respect each other's views? Do we start having different schools? Do we start drawing the line and saying, religion is the forefront of our schools here?
Yeah.
That's what they're built around.
What does that actually work back to then?
We are a Christian society, and predominantly. And the funny thing is, Catholics and Protestants have so much issue with here where most of the views line up. Yeah. But I do feel times are changing and people are changing.
Well, you're either going to hold a biblical worldview because your theology, regardless of what political affiliation you have, your theology and outlook in life will dictate your politics. Those things do go hand in hand because they might not always be at the forefront. But if you're socially conservative, you will have, an understanding of being, Christian mindset and view. So those policies and those issues that are in society that are, legislation that's passed will have a certain theology behind it. Let's be honest. And you need to look at that and say, will that positively affect people in the long run? Or will that negatively affect people in the long run? And this all needs to be researched and backed up by data. So for me, if a watch isn't broke, you don't try to fix it. And there are certain people who do need help and guidance in life. I have people who come to me personally for prayer because they suffer with same-sex attraction. Now, in the world, that's deemed as normal now. And I'm not beating anybody over the head with anything, but people need to know that there is a way, another way in life. And our Christian heritage rings through here where the way is Christ, the way is Jesus, whether you have an issue with that or not. And I'm not beating these people over the head because they're heterosexual Christian people who have problems with their lives and their marriages and their issues and things like that. So I know there's some people, would just say this in LGBT. It's not, this is not. But it's a range of thing of when we actually go back and look further at this. Is it a sin? Are we sinful? Yes. Do we practice sin? Yes. Do we need help with our sin? Yes. I was one of those people until I got saved, and that's what it boils down to. And I say I have people come to me for prayer with issues with same-sex attraction, and they admit that, but they also have been told that there's a different way in life, where you can help and get power over that with the power of the Holy Spirit. If you give your life to Jesus, and that's for me from that standpoint. And as you say, there are going to be schools that go with this, and there are going to be schools that don't go with this. That's legitimate. That's going. There's going to be ones that sit in the middle and do nothing, And it regards where your heart is right now, and where your heart needs to be, and what are the answers to the issues and the problems of these young children. And for me, it's not putting them to abortion centres and filling them full of drugs and getting their bodies mutilated. It's bringing them up in a loving, godly household that those children are going to be blessed rather than be abused, and that's what it is for me.
We have danced around me and Sean and never commented on, and it's been quite a few times, and very we had Dr. Ann on, who very pro-life, the exact same, and you were talking about ring fencing. To go back to that point, and you were saying that the Secretary of State was forced to bring that in because it was a European law, right? Was at the time, and we were out of government, so that act was brought through from the European Union, wasn't it? Is that correct?
I think it was a Labour
because
backbencher called Stella Creasy who seen a loophole in the legislation here, and they were able to bring that through. Bring that through.
Well, I'm going to state, because I'm not jumping about in this anymore, I'm going to state I don't know where I stand on the abortion, for the simple reason is I don't know. I'm not there. It's not my body, and I don't know the circumstances. And everyone always throws out the worst case scenario. What if somebody was raped? Are you forcing them to have a child? That's the worst case scenario. That's a very minimal percentage. But also, people are in abusive relationships. People have medical problems. The baby won't make it. There's a world of what ifs and things I don't step into, Glenn, because it's not me.
Yeah.
And I do not. It's whatever people make their. One thing I will say, I do judge people that use abortion as a contraceptive. That's something I think is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But I don't judge people in their circumstances. I ain't got their shoes on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that now because I've never said it, and people come at me. And this isn't a belief that close family members of mine will share with me. That they'll be completely with you on this. But when you were talking about ring fencing and things that for prayer, I'm going to be honest, Glenn, that's not what was happening in some of them situations. Some of them situations where people stand with placards shouting at people in an absolute distress time going in.
Yeah.
And that's what was happening there. And I know that, and I'm not saying who's right or wrong here, because we're in a landmine field here now. Yeah. No matter what I say, I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be pulled apart. Yeah. Whatever you say, there's going to be people. I don't feel like I have the right to judge. And I'm going to say this to you here now. I find it, and I don't have the right to judge you for your beliefs on it either.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, while we sit here, I'm not going to sit silently and say, while we all discuss this and they're like, where's my view and where are we at in this? I just don't feel like, I feel like, there's much more of a complicated spinning part in that. Yeah. And I was blessed. It took me 3.5 years to get my child. I was blessed, and I loved him, and I want him.
Me too.
But not
Me too.
But not every person was in that position. Yeah. Not every person is in a good place. Yeah. Not every child is going to be healthy. There's so many variables. Yeah. So I know your view, and I appreciate that and understand that. But I'm going to say to you that I often feel when we press our views onto ones, and that's what was happening. When you were talking about the ring fencing for prayer and all, that's not what was happening. This was people coming up and picketing in line and shouting at people that was going in, and it became quite a volatile, quite a thing. And it to me, it didn't become it was unchristian like what was happening. I've seen the pictures of it and the videos of it, and people roaring and shouting, and the things they were calling the people. I understand it was infused with passion, but let's call a spade here. That not all that was right, and that's what the reason that was done for.
When you bring people together, okay, for a certain cause, you're going to get extremists, and you're going to get people who are level-headed, and you're going to get people who are loving. So when you bring these people together, people don't know who's going to turn up at these things. Okay, so that's number one. You might have one person that spoils the whole witness for people. So in those things, those instances, we have found out there sometimes are people who do spoil the witness. Okay. However, there are areas where in that piece of legislation of Claire Bailey's where they lied about that. They lied about all those attacks and all those things going on. They purposely lied. And not only did they lie, but I was there in the Stormont Chamber when they were discussing it. They didn't even want or approach any of the evangelical pastors or ministers for their voice on it. That was a no-go. So you're talking about inclusion. You're talking about being accepted in society. Who accepted the Christian voice in this country? It was shut off. They closed our churches down. I would see that as being essential for my spirituality. You know, they've complained for years about you shouldn't put your indoctrination on us, indoctrination about your Christianity. However, it's not indoctrination, and this is the thing that people don't understand. When you come to know the Lord and know God, He sets you free from all that, you know, and it's a blessing. And these people should be a blessing rather than a hindrance. And that's what we have to be. We have been taken out of the darkness, set into the light to be a blessing to people. But there's a warfare that goes on then after that between the flesh and the spirit. And a lot of these times, some people get brought up by the flesh when it should be the spirit taking over. And be a blessing rather than a hindrance, you know. And I think that's what needs to come through. You know, obviously the law has been changed, the permit. Talk about abortion. There's a high percentage of those abortions being formed just because they want an abortion. When we look into it now, there are satanic temples in America who are having abortions in their support abortion because they see it as a satanic ritual. It just opens the floodgates for people. So the people who actually are suffering and they need help and they don't know where to go, you know, it should be the churches stepping in here and saying, you know, we're setting a ministry up here, a ministry that is in confidence, quietly. There's a phone number there. If you need help with this, you need money, you need food, whatever you need, you come see us. And it's happened in America where people have went and done this. I know friends that have been over before have got their own ministries over there. They've got their own podcast and everything, and they're really, really dead on, really nice guys. But they do that. It's not the men at the front, it's the women come out and they say, Pat, don't go through this. You don't want to do this. Come speak to us. We can help you. And it's that point in time where people feel isolated in their mindsets and their hearts that they need that common comforting voice to say, no, come help us. We can talk this through, you know. And there's a lot of other things going through too. Abusive partners forcing their other half to go through with this, you know, as well, you know. So
I totally get that. And like you're saying about having a voice, and you're true to yourself and you are, and I totally respect everything that you're saying, as in that is your beliefs. And me and Owen, we're totally different people as well. We're totally different. Some of the views that Owen has, I don't agree with them. Yeah. But on this one, I 100% agree with them. I will not judge somebody if I'm not in their shoes. Yeah. I'm not in their shoes, and I feel that I shouldn't be casting my judgment on them people, because it's unfair of me. It is totally unfair of me. Yeah. I'll judge myself. I'm the most judgmental person onto me, as in what I should do and how I should be doing things. As for what Owen does, you do you. And that's just how I feel.
Yeah, and look, we can talk about this.
This is about respecting each other's different views.
Mm. I think we need to get that out around this table. We all need to respect other people's views. You maybe don't feel that way, as in you have your core beliefs, and that is your belief, and I totally respect you for that. But I think in a society that we're in now, we should 100% respect other people's beliefs. And the same in this country. See, the Catholic and Protestant thing. Mm-hmm. Nothing will ever change if the schools are all kept Catholic and Protestant. Mm. We're talking about our children. We're putting our children into Catholic schools and Protestant schools. We're dividing them straight away. We're talking division straight away. Yeah. My kids go to an integrated school. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. There. Let's start breaking down a few walls here. Let's start getting the kids from different backgrounds. Yeah. My kids don't care if somebody's a Catholic or Protestant. Yeah. My wee friend Billy or my wee friend Sean, they're just my friend. There's nothing else around it.
Sean, I'm working in Dublin at the minute, and I love the Irish people. And, you know, I get on, you know, I'm not a bitter bone in my body or sectarian.
100%. But what I'm trying to say is the schools, even the schools in themselves, if you separate kids to being Catholic, and look, that's only my view. Yeah. Everybody has their own view. If they want to send their kids to a Protestant school, Catholic school, I really don't care. I don't care. Yeah. My view is, how do you get over these things? Yeah. Let them integrate.
Well, And you know, there's a worry then too for yourself as your Christian beliefs that if schools are amalgamated, does it dilute the RE or religious education? Because obviously you want that for your children, you want them, and I'm not saying that's true because there's a lot of people, Catholic, Protestant alike, and we will have a lot of people that agree with us. You will also have a lot of people agree with you. You know, you have a lot of people. You have a group of people that have asked you the thing, and you're very articulate and very respectful. And I have no doubt you're doing this in for the love and what and how you feel. No doubt. I always question people's motives. I don't bring anyone on here that I think that would their motives going again.
But even then, the stuff that you read through, the stuff that I'm sitting here, I'm 100% agree with what you're saying, but I also some of the stuff I don't. And that's fine. For me, I'm completely at peace with myself. Yeah. But if there's stuff in that there that you're totally against everything that's in that, I'm at peace with that as well.
Yeah.
Well, then tell me then, Glenn. And
because I think we went off topic there. We're talking about RSE.
We don't. Let's bring it back.
Yes,
let's bring it back.
It is, but
it's the bigger picture.
Bigger picture.
Yes.
And the thing is, the RSE is one part of where a lot of people feel, and a lot of Catholic people, as well as a lot of Protestant people, feel that our society is in a moral decay, and they're probably rightfully so. Some of the stuff that's going on in our society now, there is a moral decay.
Yeah.
Is religion on? Absolutely. How many young ones do you see going now? I think Protestant and Catholics are worried alike because that so many people turn away from the church. Sometimes I say to myself, is our old school beliefs going to carry us on if more people's turn away? Does that make it harder for people to come to make an approach? Is it hard? You will find, being in Christian groups, that there has to be a new way to approach people now. The old method didn't work. It's actually, if anything, we're having to think of new ideas on how to talk to people, how to reach out to people, till spread the word or to think. It's the world's changed, and that's why when you say we go back to our cultural norms, I think the norms have changed and how we speak to people. But there was one thing, Glenn, that I wanted to talk about, and this is a can of worms too, but it's something that I can't sort of in faith just go on by.
But there. Are you going to throw a grenade here?
No,
don't throw too many more.
No, and I hope you don't feel like it's a thing, because I want this to be an exchange of views.
Yes,
absolutely. And I don't want to be sitting here like I'm shouting yours down, because there's so many people that share your belief, and you know, who am I to say we're right? If you're right, and I'm arguing in the wrong case, you know. I can only speak from where I am, and honestly, and you have spoke honestly and openly, so I have no right to. But one thing I find very, very hard to me is you had said that you've had people come to you with the you put it as same-sex attraction. I would have called them gay, and they prayed with you that there was another way. I struggle, because I just see that as, if somebody's gay, they're gay. Yeah. And why do they need to pray? Why do they need to struggle? You obviously, you must see that as a sin. I think it's a bigger sin to lie to yourself, to get married, to pretend. I've seen it happen and absolutely wreck people's lives when they've come out and the oars engulfed them and they've killed themselves, or they've become depressed, or they've. I don't know. You've said that, and I was like, I have to ask, because I just completely see it differently.
Yeah, well,
and obviously it's a thing, but I just wanted to ask you on that: is it, like, you have people come to you, and do you think that prayers is? I don't know. That's something I wanted to ask you about, because I don't understand. Is there moral turmoil that they want to be a good Christian, but they feel they can't, their sexuality isn't in keeping with their Christian beliefs? Is that what they've come to? Is that the turmoil there?
Everybody struggles with sin. Everybody struggles with sin. With the biblical worldview of what sin is the transgression of God's law. What's God's law? God's laws are the first 5 or 6 books of the Bible, which is the Torah, which is all the Jewish sort of like Israelite sort of like understanding of what law is. nobody can fulfill that law. In the Old Testament, you had to fulfill that law, regarding sin. So in the New Testament it says, look, if you break, and also you had the moral law as well of God, which is the Ten Commandments. So God said, look, if you do these, you'll be blessed. If you turn away from these, you're going to reap cursing on your land and your country. So from a moralistic standpoint and biblical worldview, that what you have is that, there's your 10 commandments. Stick to them and you'll be blessed. Don't stick to them and you'll be cursed. So we're finding that too, that, people in life generally do get some sense of happiness in their life. Whenever I wasn't a Christian, I would have drank. I would drink heavily out every weekend. And for me, that was turning the registers back to zero, or the things that I was going through, like a release. When I played football, that was a release. When I bought a new car, that was a release. When I went shopping, that was a release. Everything that I tried to, when I went to the gym, that was a release. Took up cycling, that was a release. I was trying to always fulfill something that I had missing inside. And we all have things missing inside of us. But for a time period, if you go down that route of open up what God calls a sin, then you're opening yourself up to demonic activity, and it's the same as people who are lustful relationships. They have a relationship, they go out on a Saturday night, they wake up next morning, they're empty, there's nothing in it, there's nothing meaningful in it, and they keep on doing it because they're addicted to it. The same as drink, you start off drinking and then you get addicted to it. So for us, we all need to find appreciation and acceptance in a group type, because this world wants to classify you as a certain type person, whatever. We're made unique, but we're born into sin. It doesn't matter what you identify as. There's people, as I said before, there's people who are Christians in marriage, who are having relationships outside their marriage, but you don't hear nothing about that preached, So for me, everything must be called out, because we find that if it's not dealt with, then they're only going to be even more of a lost state than they started off. So for me, you need to get to the root of the issue, and a lot of the root of the issues of people's lives are trauma in childhood, and those traumas in childhood spiral out of control early in life because they grow up angry, frustrated, and then they want to try to find acceptance in a certain thing. Again, a reference back to football, because they played football, acceptance to the football team, political party, LGBT, whatever you want to say it, but it's their community and they feel empowered to be part of that community, and that's fine. However, I went down to Belfast one day, brought a wee trolley with me full of tea and sandwiches. This is getting off course again.
No, you're fine.
But my heart is to reach people with the truth, because I knew before I got saved that I was having blackouts and I was having panic attacks, and I knew it was spiritual to a certain extent, but I got to the point where I didn't want to go on anymore in life. Everything was an effort. Life and people in general, workplaces, etc., etc. And I found that when I heard the gospel message, it saved me. And that's the message. It's the gospel message of Jesus Christ. And whether people want to say religious or whatever they want to say, we feel that is the way, the truth, and the life. John 14, verse 6. That's the verse that came through to me. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And a lot of this is a battle, an attack on truth. And you have to settle it in your own heart, whether you're gay, bi, lesbian, transsexual, heterosexual, whatever sexual you identify with. You need to settle it in your heart. Is there a God? Where am I from? Where am I going? And how do I get there? And those are the questions that we all ask from time to time. Why are we here? Where are we from? Where are we going? And how do I get there? Is there an afterlife? Is there a spiritual realm? And I am sitting here as a testimony today to say, yes, there is. I've been saved. Spiritually saved back onto God. So we're born into sin. But then God brings us out of that sin. You still have the old man syndrome, you still have the flesh, but you're also born unto God then through spiritually. And for me, there's a lot of these people who are steeped in sin. They've got demonic strongholds in their life, and they need broken out of those demonic strongholds. And sometimes people just jump on me, as you said. There's people on me, people on you, but ultimately, that's what it boils down to for me. I went down to witness to people. So you see, if you see on Facebook, sometimes it gives like a harsh message of street preachers, and they do sometimes say things that I wouldn't condone. I have a different way of reaching people, different way of reaching out to people and evangelizing people. For me, you need to follow what Christ done. You know, he didn't go to the spiritual first, he went to the physical. He addressed the physical issues, he fed them, he watered them, he seen to their needs, and then he found the issue out and then he brought them resolution. You know, that's the way we should evangelize. However, we went down this one day, these LGBT crowds down with all youngsters, all the universities, and I said, you know what, preaching at these people is no good. Like, you know, you're not going to preach at these people and they're just going to get the backs up. It's the same as going and reaching anybody in the world. You know, if you're going to turn around and say to someone, your beliefs is wrong, blah, 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 straight away, you're just going to say, your back's up and walk away. But if you go and you feed them and you look after them. So I brought the wee tea trolley round, tea flask out. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of tea? Oh, yes, I look, come on, yes, oh, yes, please. Went down, poured them all tea, give them all tea out. Give them all sandwiches. We like a bun. Yeah, because we're down feeding the homeless too. And trying to help them. And there was this crowd of people. Obviously, the majority went away. And we were left with 2 or 3 people. And these 2 or 3 people were confused about their sexuality. And I started talking just openly, like I'm talking to you. Said, have you ever had a one-night stand? Yes. Well, what way did you feel after that? Well, I felt lost. Did you feel alone? Yes. Were your friends there with you after that? No. I said, were you looking for love in that relationship? Yeah. Were you let down? Absolutely. I said, so it's not love, it's lust. So we needed to find that. You know, what is love? You know, what is love? You know, for me, it's a passage of scripture that goes into 20 different things. But there's 3 different loves in the Bible. There's got agape love. You've got a love between a man and a woman. And you've got a love between other people. And then you've got love that's between God and you. You know, so there's 3 or 4 different types of love in the Bible. And again, who defines that love or whatever. But those young people open up to me, end up crying, end up saying, look, I need help. And when you're with a crowd, everybody's going in a direction. But when you're by yourself, you close the door, that's the real you. And those people are lost. And we feel that we have the ultimate message spiritually for the country and for the nations and for what people need to turn to be blessed again, you know. That's it in a nutshell.
Look, Glenn, I can respect that. And to be fair, it's the first time I've actually sat and wanted to listen to and hear the why and the how. And I get that if you can show them what's come in and lit up your life, if you can show that to them, that would light up their life. And I have absolute respect, and I don't feel, I genuinely do feel, even talking to you and even knowing that our beliefs don't line up, that it's good in your heart that you're doing it. If I think it's misguided, you think I'm misguided, that's just the respect that we're going to have for each other, that Absolutely. Our opinions would differ. And probably if our society could sit down and say to everyone sometimes that wouldn't. I'm going to ask one question though. If you went through your entire life and you kept the commandments and you were married and you had your children, but in your heart you had bad thoughts and you were an angry person, you weren't great for them, but you've done everything. But you have somebody that has a good heart and but they're gay and they have a good heart and they've loved all through life. I sometimes wonder who is the more Christian. You say about that, but I think sometimes to me, to my belief to what Christianity is are you a good person?
Yeah.
How do you treat people? Is there good and kindness in your heart? Have you love for children? Have you love for everyone? And sometimes I feel like that to me weighs up. Not all the commandments we've been set down and all the laws we set down to me defines a Christian. Sometimes I look and some good people do bad things and some bad people do good things. But I always sit down and say, when you sit with yourself, are you content in the person that you are? Are you good? Do you try and do good? You know, we all sin. We all have our things we've done we're never proud of and reflection, and that is life. And there's very few of us will ever go through, and if you go through and say you don't have that, you're lying.
Yeah.
But I just sometimes say, because people's sexualities or beliefs, I don't think that makes them less Christian if they're good people. And I think this is the problem that we'll have, is that's why we'll never, our pictures will never line up, because you're coming from that and you've been saved, and that's and you've already identified that your core belief, no matter where or what you're in, you come back to that core belief, and that's yours, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, going just on that basis, you know, if you say, like, I am this, or I identify as nationally as being a Christian, but what defines a Christian? What makes a Christian?
Well, that's why I says to you, I feel that defining a Christian is you believe there's a higher power than you. Mm-hmm. We believe that there's a reason we're here, and to be good to each other, till be good to each other. And sometimes, Glenn, people in them will find it hard because your beliefs are so strong, which has to be admired, because people don't have strong beliefs on anything anymore. One thing about society is people's beliefs are becoming diluted, their passions becoming diluted. Some people aren't, but when you're talking about going to them places and them things, they're so charged, because you'll have what you said, the people that showed up to that but weren't carrying your message, and some of the people that show up to them lines won't carry the message for the LGBT. Yeah. It's that sort of person that's there, and it always, sometimes we've seen the clashes, and we've seen the thing. It's
the worldview clashing with the biblical view,
and we're going to have more and more of this. I find I don't want us to go around in more circles, because the RSE is obviously a big thing, and for people that share the same belief as you, what is the steps that they need to do then on the website?
Firstly, I would probably say, for anybody that is listening, go on and look at it for themselves.
Yeah. Where would you get it? It's
so go onto the SIA website. SIA, just type into Google.
SIA, it's the SSEA, is that right?
No, it's CCEA.
Oh, CCEA. Because it comes across SIA, but CCEA.
CCEA framework, just CCEA framework for RSE.
Okay.
You go on to look at that. You can also go on and look at the different documents here.
Yep.
From the WHO, International Planned Parenthood as well.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do.
Is that your own?
We're going to include. We're going to include, guys. Any of us watching this, below this video, you will see links till each of the ones that Glenn has described here. We will include them so you can.
Yeah. So and again, our Facebook page is United Parental Action, and also the Twitter feed as well. So we're just operating out of those at the moment.
And this is different religious. There's people from different backgrounds in this group.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. No, because I did add one, and I was just, because I was like, you know, the way you think this is. Oh, no, often what happens is when there's a political divide here, it's one view of one person here, where this seems to transcend the one thing, and I said it in the show, is our religions aren't that far apart, and they haven't been that long, that the core values of the religions are very similar. So it's I was surprised that it wasn't a united front. I was surprised actually parties weren't united in that when you said that to me. But it's a political agenda.
We actually had a meeting, you know, in Belfast, where we had ONTU coming and TUV coming and DP coming. So there's parties. This is cross community. This is not, you know, I said before, it's not, you know, what we deem as political. You know, it's whether this is a good thing for children or whether this is a bad thing, regardless of my beliefs, my personal beliefs, or anything like that. As I say, I don't push them on to anybody. But again, there are common sense things here that need to do, and we need to address, obviously, the issues that you've brought up. And we need to sit around the table and see what's good for children and what's bad for children, you know. And as I say, whenever you look into this, you go to the WHO, you go to international guidance, you go to Planned Parenthood, and this is the one thing that I wanted to bring up too. International Planned Parenthood was started by a woman called Margaret Sanger, And Margaret Sanger was the person who brought in birth control. And not only birth control, but she read eugenics, some guy's book on eugenics. And the book on eugenics was more or less population control. So again, she was also on public record of saying that she wanted to eradicate the Negro population. And obviously, if you're providing abortions for people, then it's a way of population control. You don't try to get out here. Now, this is just me.
These are strong extracts from this. If this is
Well, I can read it out. In 1916, Sanger opened the world's first birth control clinic in New York City. At the first American Birth Control Conference in 1921, Sanger founded the American Birth Control League. 1942, changed its name to Planned Parenthood Federation in America. 1952 in Bombay, India, the third international conference of Planned Parenthood, the International Planned Parenthood Federation, which the documents from, was founded. Sanger served as the president of the IPPF from 1952 to 59. She died in 1966. Sanger was a leading advocate of the eugenics movement, specifically of negative eugenics, which promoted the reduction of sexual reproduction and sterilization of people with undesired traits or economic conditions. Sanger believed the use of birth control was necessary not only for the individual woman's well-being, but also the economy. In her 1931 pamphlet, Family Limitation, Sanger wrote, "The working woman can use direct action by refusing to supply the market with children."
How does this link into the RSE?
Because they also have global guidance documents here. I'm not saying that SIA has went to that thing. I'm not saying there's a connection there, but I'm saying once you start reading these international documents, you will quite clearly see that there is a relationship here between their beliefs and their theology, as you say, or their philosophies.
I'm sorry. I feel that this is a slight overstep because we're drawn really, really vague lines between Sanger and them to say that that's in the WHO. So I think we need to be careful that we're not misinformation in this situation, because where is the direct relation between these and the RSE legislation?
The WHO, there's some people in WHO who have...
Sanger's a pharmaceutical company, isn't it? It's a big pharma.
International Planned Parenthood is internationally recognised as being people who provide abortions, healthcare, they say, also gender ideology, everything that's on the CS framework.
See, this is what I'm talking about, Glenn, about the scaremongering in this here. And why I say that the topics you brought up have merit to be discussed, and rightfully so.
Yes.
But this here obviously is absolutely core again what you're against. But we don't have any relation with these in the actual discussion of RSE.
Well, RSE is covering these topics. RSE is covering abortion. RSE is covering birth control.
But you opened that conversation as she was in eugenics, and again, Negro thing. It's quite sensationalized when that's not. It's a broad. Yes. It's a very, very broad.
Yes, but Planned Parenthood actually came on and have a thing on their website where they actually say about Margaret Sanger. She's actually been. They have a full list about what they agreed with, what they didn't agree with. So they've settled in the sand. What I'm trying to say, this is where the mindset of this comes from. So Planned Parenthood also said here, abortion, birth control, emergency conception, sexual pleasure and sexual dysfunction, sexual orientation, gender identity, relationships, consent and sexual assault, sexually transmitted infections. So that's all taken off Planned Parenthood's website. And whenever you go in there, I'm saying that there's documents internationally where people can draw their guidance for these different views. I'm not saying that these people have drawn on, I'm not scaremongering. This is off their own documents here. So if you were going to create a policy or create an RSE thing for a school, what guidance would you recommend? I leave people to make their own conclusions on this. But I'm just putting it out there where these things come from. There's another guy called Alfred Kinsley, and these Planned Parenthood has actually been associated with these people. It's not as if it's just like,
Oh no, I get what you're saying here.
Yeah.
And listen, I've said to you there earlier about what my views are, and I get what I've read about this eugenics briefly, and their idea was that the world population was getting out of control, and they were going to control the world environment and this, that, and our population. I've seen some of that abroad. My one worry is the topic we're discussing, and I know abortion's in it, and these are obviously a pro-abortion, pro-advocate for everything that you want to stop. But we're bringing up them and bringing up the terms of cultural control population and thing. It to me, it just seems like that's it's not relevant. It is relevant, but if anyone wants to make their decision, let's make it on what's in front of us, on the legislation that's in place, not where we think that they've drawn this from, and the thing. Because to be fair, if they're talking about underage pregnancies and things, they're going to have very similar. They're going to have similar mindsets to some of these. They're going to draw, and they're going to share, but it's not RSE. And this is my way, because when I got stuff through from RSE, this is the sort of things I hear, and I was like, oh my God, we need to have this conversation.
I know what you're saying, and that's where I want to reiterate as well. What is ahead of us is a series of stages, okay? We need to fill out a consultation form that's found on the Department of Education website to say if you want your children into it or you want your children out of it.
Is it the vagueness of it?
It's the vagueness of it, but again, people aren't just sitting down and making these things up on their head. They're following international guidance on these things, and this is what I'm trying to say to you. This is where this all goes back to. This all goes back to the WHO. It all goes back to Planned Parenthood. And if you teach a child that they're trapped in the same body, or trapped in a different body from an early age, they're going to be hooked on puberty blockers for their life, which is
that's such a different a medical intervention, because I feel our opinions probably would line up on this. I do not believe. It's a whole different podcast, so I think we'll stay. I will say it briefly, and I don't care. We're probably coming to. I've seen this going on in America. Genetically intervening with a child before, like, I'm going to give you a comparison. The guy sat down, £10,000. He sat down a donut in front of an 11-year-old child, and they took the donut. They're not of the mindset to make rational decisions. We shouldn't be forcing upon life decisions. That's fine. I would say we'd probably think that's a complete different topic. Probably get pulled apart for that, but let's keep them separate, because that's not in hormonal treatment and things. Not in that, and that's a very vague. Yeah.
But they're still want to teach gender ideology.
So then, I'll ask you.
So again, if a child goes through that, then who foots the bill for that? Does the NHS foot the bill for that? Does we as taxpayers have to pay for that? For that child
that's different legislation, different conversations. But is this your worry that their end goal is what you're reading in Singers, and this is the first opening for that for the second? Is that the biggest? Is that the main crux of what we're saying here? That this is where we just can't have.
Well, when you go back, but at the very onset of this, on this whole march through the institutions, it's cultural Marxism, it's gender ideology through critical theory, that one person's oppressed and the other is an oppressor, and this is where it comes from. And there's a guy called Gramsci who was a socialist, sort of like Marxist, and he said that you need to remove the hegemony around children. And whenever you remove that hegemony around those children, and you teach a radical sexual education to them, what will happen is that you'll have a liberalised community or country 10, 15 years' time, and that's what needs to happen. And that's why there's attack on the family, that's why there's attack on marriage, that's why there's attack on the nuclear family. To go that, and that's the theology behind this. That's the theology behind all of this. When you look into it, you start revising it.
Well, okay. Look, Ben, there's different subjects that I would actually love to. The reason why is I don't want to have an argument. To me, this feels like a frank exchange of views with somebody that I respect, because there's so many people in this world that don't have any belief, and you have your core values, and I don't feel like you're coming from a bad place. I don't want to be sitting here, and I know there's loads of people who be sitting here and they want to shout the message loud and they want to shout over people and get that. I don't have that feeling. I appreciate what you come from, and so many people will share your view. RSE to me, and I've quite a few times you've said radical sexual education, and using the term radical in it to you might seem radical. To me, it didn't seem so radical. Some of it seemed very practical. Some of it seemed necessary, if I'm going to be honest. I have views where what is the full extent of this and how do I deliver that? Because I feel that there is a required change. Everything's changing. People are online protection, health. Children need, I'll give you an example. Children sending snaps of themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's online, and there's no point in education to say to them, look, listen, this is online, this will happen, and blah, blah, blah. The times are changing, technology is changing. There has to be certain tweaks in what we're teaching them to comprehend what's happening. There'll be a clash of heads, but what I will say is there'll be a lot of people share your view, and they want to express your view, and they will want it. So we are going to include the links, and we're going to include them all in here. And
if parents are in the view that they want to remove their kid from that education, you actually showed me earlier there is a form you fill out.
Yeah, there's a form here. Number one thing that we were asking for parents and things like that to do was to contact, if you're in opposition to this radical teaching. Now, you said basically that there's things that that's positive in it, and that's what I'm saying too. There are.
You call it radical?
Well, there is
and
radical.
That does undermine some of that, because that's not the RSE doesn't stand for radical sexual education.
Well, it's radical as perform as what the cultural norm is, because you do have access to abortions, you do have gender ideology and LGBT, which has never been taught in the schools ever before. So from that point of view, it is radical. But you're right, relationship sexuality education is the full proper term, But if you're in opposition to it, then we would advise that you would contact your school through the Board of Governors and your principal. Send a letter in to just ask them quite simply, do you plan to teach this to our children? If it's yes, then you may make a decision. If it's no, you make a decision.
There is a limitation in this, though. So we are this one's going to go out earlier than would have been expected. What is the date you said, 24th?
The 24th of November. So that's whenever the consultation period finishes. I'm in Ballygully tonight in Queen's Corner. We're having another parental group meeting as well tonight at 7 o'clock.
Can people reach out to your group direct, for...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's email, there's again Facebook, and there's Gmail as well. So get in contact with us if you want help or guidance or anything at all.
And also, Glenn, you will have said some things to people that they might be in a bad place, and they might be like, they got a sense of calm or something from you, and they might want to reach out to you on another issue or a different thing.
Without a doubt, my door is always open to anybody. I had an office in Portadown through the lockdown period, and I had people call into my office every day just to talk and have a coffee and a chat and gently just help them. And one of the guys actually said, you've restored my faith in humanity, which was a massive statement to me. And I said, you know what, if I'm being a positive influence on people, then that's what I want to remain to be, a positive influence through this as well. You might not necessarily agree with everything I say. However, we'll need to agree to disagree, and also
there's one thing I do want to say. I genuinely believe you're a good guy, and I would have no harm in saying to people that you would look after them and turn, no matter our discipline and belief. If you come on and I didn't like, I think we could have got really, really touchy, and I could have been quite vocal and things. But I think this is actually a learning point and a turning point for me, as in the podcast side of things, where when somebody's sitting there and your views are completely polar, but you learn to respect and exchange and have your stay. I think this is probably what our country's lacking, and what people are lacking, is that finding a compromise, finding a thing without a heated exchange, because people can't have these conversations without it getting, because they're passionate and their thing. So it's one of those. So we are going to include all that, and I hope that there's people, if they find solace when they reach out to you. I hope that our education, because to me, these are issues we can talk about. These are core beliefs to me. Children's education, economics, the how this country's going to move forward, not the politics that the people want to throw about. So to me, it was important we had on. When we read it, we had different views, and we didn't shy away from that. And you came. To me, there's a lot of respect for you, because you came, and you would have known that not all the views would be the same, and you stayed your course. You're true to your beliefs, and I have absolute respect for that. And I want to thank you for coming on. I know that we could go on 50 different
directions.
Maybe you'll have me back again, will you?
Absolutely. and when we want to stoke up the flames again, no. But I did want to say that I have a massive respect for you, and I would say to anybody that's listening there now that there will be people so much behind you, and they're away off to join the group. And then there'll be people shouting at us that we didn't say, and that's the way the world works. Yeah. But one thing I would say is, I hope for the children that we can find a resolve and compromise, because I don't want something that's splitting them, and half the class is sitting out, and then half the class is worried that they've missed something, and then they're asking when they come back what they've missed, and then they're getting it told with the Chinese whispers and the 50p's, and I don't know where to go. I don't have any constructive thought of to try and help us, because it's a minefield. But I just want to thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me on, and God bless you both.
Thank you very much, Glenn.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.